Nursing school can be brutal, but there's a way to thrive in the midst of it. I'm a nurse practitioner and a professor of nursing, and I built the most evidence-based study routine after watching 20 plus hours of learning science and then implemented it on myself as a D&P student and watched it improve my grades and cut my testing anxiety in half. Here's the exact routine. Let's go. So here's the deal. The first thing, which you already know, is that most students study pretty terribly. They're inefficient, they're not focused, and so they don't get the results that they want. But it's no wonder, right? If I go to the gym and I just start picking up some weights randomly without knowing what I'm doing, and I don't really know how hard to try or what to work on, I'm not going to get the best results. But what if instead I go to the dude who's super strong and I say, hey, can you just teach me what you do, and then I'll do it? I bet you'd get much better results if you just do what the strong guy does, right? It's no different with studying for nursing school. The good news is it's really not that complicated, all right? It's as simple as a two-piece equation. Effective studying equals active recall times spaced repetition. Active recall and spaced repetition are like your sword and your shield to fight against the nursing school exams. It's all you really need. What does that mean? I'm going to explain it. Let's start with active recall. Active recall is basically just testing yourself, quizzing yourself, right? It's finding ways to actively remember or actively recall the information. Active recall is so important that when you think, I'm going to study, from now on, you need to think studying equals active recall, and again, times spaced repetition. We'll get that into a second. There are dozens of research articles that compare students who do active recall to those who do like taking notes or highlighting in a book, and their test scores are just way better. The weightlifting analogy really is perfect. If someone just goes into the gym and looks at the weights or reads the numbers on the weights, they're not going to get any stronger, right? You've got to lift them. You have to do the heavy work. That's what active recall is. It's remembering, and it's your brain's heavy lifting. It's weightlifting for your neurons. And so active recall needs to be the water that you swim in. It needs to be what you do before class, during class, after class, the rest of the week, before the exam, and all the way to before the NCLEX and before your boards. And if you go into graduate school, it's what you need to do then too. And honestly, I'm working as a nurse practitioner right now. I still do it all the time. So now I want to flesh it out for you and kind of show you what would active recall look like for an average week for a nursing student. So the first thing is before class. This is where you're going to do pre-testing. Now, if any of you have ever painted a room, it's really just like putting primer on a wall. So if you're going to paint, typically you paint the wall with something called primer first, and it prepares the wall to receive the paint so that the paint doesn't come off. It is literally a perfect analogy for pre-testing. Pre-testing is when you find access to 5 or 15 practice questions on the topic before you've gone to lecture, and you just do them. You're not worried about getting them right. You're just worried about reading them and trying to answer them and kind of get the gist of what's going on. There's literally research that shows doing pre-testing, even if you get the questions wrong, actually long-term improves your performance on those exams. So pre-test as the first exposure to that content. So if you're going into a lecture on how to do a cardiac exam, find some questions online. Have ChatGPT make some questions for you, and then just go through them. Done. Not complicated. 5 to 15 questions. You're done. Then the second thing to do before class is to stop and recite information. So this is when you're reading the textbook, you're going over the slides, you're watching the videos before you go to class. You don't want to just passively let it run through your mind in one ear and out the other. You want to stop every so often and recite it to yourself and say the content in your own words. And so if you're watching some kind of YouTube video, again, on how to do a cardiac exam, you'd watch it and then you'd say, okay.
So he put his stethoscope on the second intercostal border, and he was listening to the aortic valve, which is on, what was it?
And so you start to actually already put the pieces together in your head, and your brain starts to realize like, okay, I need to actually pay attention because I have to put this together on my own. And then with that, honestly, the more physical you are with it, the better it works. And so you could just do it in your head, but what's even better is saying it out loud. And what's even better than that would be typing it out. And what's even better than that would be handwriting it, because you get to hear and see and read what you're writing. And it's additional reinforcement. Again, if you think about your brain, right, you have a visual center in the back, you have an audio center on the sides, you have your motor sensor in the top. And so if all of those are engaged in learning the content, you have multiple areas of your brain that are experiencing this. And so there's more ways to connect the dots, or literally to connect the neurons. All right, now here's a big one. In class, this might be a little controversial. Don't take normal notes. Don't just write down whatever the professor says. What you want to do instead is write questions. Studies show that note-taking is essentially a waste of time. Taking notes is just summarizing, but you have the PowerPoint file. you have the textbook, you have the information, so you don't need to just rewrite it in a different format. You need to get it embedded into your brain. And the only way that happens is active recall. So instead of just passively writing notes saying,
blood pressure over 140 or over 90 is considered high blood pressure,
you would write, what is the definition of high blood pressure? You're writing a question. There is an answer to that you have to remember now. What if you don't remember the answer? It's in the PowerPoint, or it's in the textbook, right? Or you can talk to a professor. Now, you can also write it down, but we're going to get to that in a second. Now, this might sound pretty different and maybe difficult to you. There's a common misconception that studying should be easy. It's not. That's like saying weightlifting should be easy. If it's easy, then you're not doing it right. We think wrongly about memory. Memory is not formed by filling a bucket in your brain. It's formed by pulling it out. Active recall. It's about stress testing your mind and showing your neurons they're not currently good enough. They need to improve. You need those moments when you're thinking, oh my gosh, what was the answer to this? I can't remember. That has to happen. So now I want to talk about Notion, the app I mentioned before, and this is the best app in my opinion for taking notes in nursing school, and I'm going to show you how to use it in this way. All right, guys, so now I'm going to walk you through how to use Notion during class because I think it's a little bit abstract if I just mention it without an example. So here we go. On the left here, I have my Notion pulled up. So this is what it should actually look like when you start. New page, there's nothing on there. So for your title, call it whatever you want. So I'm going to say this is my pharmacology course. Then down here, there's nothing there. What I would recommend going straight to is what's called a toggle. It's a bullet point that allows nesting and hiding the sub-bullet points under the main bullet point. So to get to that, you type \TOG for toggle, hit enter, and now you're in this toggle bullet point format so that whenever you type anything, hit enter, go to the next line, enter tab, and tab brings you to a sub-bullet point, which you can keep doing this. And then eventually you can close that little caret and it hides all that stuff you just mentioned. So what would this actually look like in reality? Well, let's walk through what I would actually do during lecture. So here on the right side, we have our professors talking about ACE inhibitors like lisinopril. So here we have a slide about the mechanism. So here, instead of typing
ACE inhibitors block the ACE enzyme and block angiotensin,
instead of typing that, I would just say, how do ACE inhibitors work? What is their mechanism? I could just move on and just leave it at the question, and then I'm just paying attention as the professor talks. Or if I want to get fancy, I could go to my snip tool right here, my snipping tool. If you have Windows, if you have a Mac, there's a different way to screenshot, and I can put that in there. And then you're going to screenshot, drag and drop, not drag and drop, drag a box over the area of the screen you want to copy, right click, enter tab to hide it under that initial point, paste, or in this case, Control V for paste. And now I have a screenshot of that PowerPoint file nested under my question. And then I'll just keep on going. So then here, common meds that are ACE inhibitors end in pril. And so what common suffix or ending of the word do ACE inhibitors have? If I want to write the answer, I could write .pril. Examples, lisinopril. Okay. Then I'm going to click on this caret, go on back, and I'm just going to keep writing questions as my professor keeps on going through the lecture. All right, so here is similar, right? So here we have angiotensin 2 receptor blockers, or ARBs or ARBs. So I can ask this here. What is an ARB? How does an ARB work? Mechanism. What is the common ending or suffix of an ARB? And then if I wanted to just, again, screenshot, snip, click and drag, copy, enter, tab, paste. There's my screenshot. I can hide it, bam. All right, now what about after class? And by after class, I mean right after class, immediately after. What do? Two things. You're going to go through all the questions, and then you're going to grade yourself on a stoplight scale, red, yellow, or green, based on how difficult they were. After class, I would ask myself each question. So I would not have the PowerPoint visible, and from memory, I would just say, okay, how do ACE inhibitors work? What is their mechanism? And from memory, I'm going to have to say,
ACE inhibitors inhibit the angiotensin II converting enzyme in the lungs,
which then, I go downstream on that whole mechanism. If I can't remember, then I can pull this up, right? Now, if I got it right and I know it, I'm going to just triple click. That highlights the whole thing. And then I'm going to pick a color, text color, and I'm going to make that green. Okay, and then I'm going to hide my answer again. Green for good, I know it well. Let's say I get to the next question. What common suffix do ACE inhibitors have? I know it ends in pril, like lisinopril and enalapril, but let's pretend I didn't. I thought about it, I couldn't remember. I dropped down, I was like, shoot, it was pril, I forgot. I'm going to turn this red. Triple click, highlights the whole sentence, click on red text, move on. I'm going to do the next one. What is an ARB? It ends in sartan, like losartan, and it's a cousin of the ACE inhibitors, and it's an anti-blood pressure pill, whatever. That one was easy, but I didn't fully get all of it, so I'm going to turn that one yellow. Okay. I would recommend you have 3 colors, and you highlight each question on Notion from your lectures as one of the colors. You're going to want to focus on the stuff you don't know, the reds and then the yellows. You're going to try to not spend a lot of time on the greens because that's a waste of your time. You already know it. I also like that I can copy YouTube videos and put the URLs in there. So let's say I find a YouTube video about, we're going to use one of my videos. All right, so here we have a good-looking professor right here who's talking about SIRS and sepsis and all these kind of things. So if I particularly enjoyed this video, sometimes I'll actually just screenshot videos, or you can just copy the URL, Control-C to copy, go back over to Notion, and then let's pretend it was the answer to this question. I could just Control-V. You can embed the video, meaning you can watch the videos from straight in Notion, or if I undo that, you can bookmark it, which means it just puts a little link in there for you to watch the video and click on it. So, but again, it all gets hidden under that toggle, which is so clean and so nice, and you only see it if you want to. Then how does this transition into the following week or several weeks until the upcoming exam, whenever that is? It turns into daily revision. Daily revision has 2 components as well, understanding and memorization. You have to start with understanding the material. If you jump straight to memorizing things out of context, you will not truly grasp the information, and a good test question will probe right through that. You will not get the answer right because a good question is intended to assess understanding, not just memorization. How do you know if you actually understand something? Basically, could you accurately explain it to a 10-year-old without looking at your notes? They will ask why 100 times. And that's really great for us to test our understanding with. And so if you're pretending to explain this to a 10-year-old and you say,
heart failure causes edema in the legs or swelling in the legs.
Why?
Well, heart failure is a failure of the heart to pump, and so then the blood backs up and then gravity pulls it down to the legs.
Oh, why does the heart fail?
Well, there's several things that can cause the heart to fail.
And then if you can answer those why questions, why, when you get to the point when there's a why question and you can't explain it, now you know the limit of your understanding. Maybe you've reached the limit and it's far enough for you to know. I mean, eventually you don't need to know everything, right? But if your limitation, if you've hit a why question that you can't answer, that you should be able to answer, then you know you don't understand it well enough. At that point, go back to your sources, the PowerPoint, the textbook, your professor, and learn it. And then come back and answer the question again. So what's a good way to go from lecture to truly understanding the material? So how do I get to the point where I can answer all those why questions? It's called scoping the subject, seeing the whole tree, not just a leaf. So you basically make a diagram of everything you need to learn from that topic or that lecture, and you put it all together and you see how it all fits together in this bigger picture. If you don't do this, you risk seeing individual leaves, but not the whole tree. This is really the best thing to do first when you study, the first time you sit down to study a lecture, because it really does boost people's understanding. If you have a good holistic understanding of the material, when you move on to memorizing, you know where to put all those memorization facts into context. If you don't know the size of the tree and the shape of the whole tree, you can't necessarily memorize where each individual leaf is. But if you already know what the whole tree looks like, you're like, oh yeah, and then that one leaf goes there and that one leaf goes there, and there's anchoring points literally in your neurons to connect the dots. So you have to understand that big picture first. It's drawing the full map before scribbling in the details. Now, the other thing is there is a lot to understand in nursing school, isn't there? You need to focus on what is most important. There's two things you need to focus on. What will be tested and what is your weakness? Those need to be what you're hammering all the time. How do you find out what's going to be tested? Easy things would be if your professor gives you a study guide or some kind of reference like that, or anytime during class, if a professor says, this will probably be on an exam, hint, hint, right? Things like that. I do that. If your professor doesn't do that, you can go to their office hours. If they're not going to give you that information, then you still have other resources. A lot of nursing schools use programs like ATI, UWorld, or things like that, where there's built-in outlines and guides and sometimes even study questions available. Use those. If there's a topic that shows up on a lot of the study questions, then it's probably worth knowing, right? So you just got to get yourself immersed in the material and see what's most important and focus on that. But when you're in a testable context like nursing school where there's exams, you need to focus on what you're really bad at so that you can bring that up so that you can pass your exams and become a nurse, right? And that brings us to what is called a retrospective review table. This thing is killer. This is how you know what to study. There's two kinds. There's a prospective and a retrospective. Prospective is a plan you set out ahead of time and you say, okay, on Tuesday, I'm going to study this. On Wednesday, I'm going to study this. On Thursday, I'm going to study this. The problem with that is you never actually do it, right? Life gets in the way and you end up not following your plan. So all you did was waste time making this pretty little table. On the other side, there's a retrospective review table. Retro means previous or in the past, right? Like retro fashion. A retrospective table says, this is what I've already studied. And so every day when you wake up, you say, okay, I need to study for health assessment, or I need to study for pharmacology. You look at all of your pharmacology content on all of your notes and you say, what am I worst at? And that's what I'm going to study today. I don't have any plans for tomorrow. Just for today, I'm going to study my REDS. And so if your REDS are the pharmacology of the autonomic nervous system, then you're going to put that in today. That's what I'm studying today. And then hopefully all my red questions can eventually turn yellow, maybe even green. Then this afternoon, when you're going to study again, you're going to, again, fresh look at what are my REDS, and I'm going to study my REDS. Tomorrow, what are my REDS? I'm going to study my REDS. It keeps you laser focused on what's most testable and what I'm not really great at to improve your performance. All right, so we've spent all this time talking about active recall, but if you remember from the beginning of the video, effective studying equals active recall times what? Spaced repetition. So we're going to move from conceptually understanding something to now memorizing the details you need to memorize, because sometimes you just have to memorize stuff. What is spaced repetition? Spaced repetition is studying the same things over increasingly long periods of time. It's spaced out periods of time, so it is spaced repetition. This was based on something called the forgetting curve. There was research done decades ago on this that basically showed when you're exposed to something, you forget most of it. But then if you're re-exposed to it a little bit later, you remember more. And if you forget a little bit less, and then if you're exposed again, you remember it and you forget even less. And the more times you're exposed to something through active recall, the less you forget. What's nice about this is that it shows that you are not bad at what you do. You're a normal human. Normal humans have a forgetting curve. We just need to hack this to our advantage. And this is where Anki comes into play. So Anki is an online flashcard app that is incredible because not only is it flashcards, but it has an algorithm in it that uses spaced repetition to fight against the forgetting curve. So just like how YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, they all have these algorithms that kind of determine what you're going to see. Anki has an algorithm that determines what flashcards you need to study today. And what does it base those off of? Your red categories. Anytime you get a flashcard incorrect, it bumps up the frequency of how often you need to see that card. It's incredible. It's like a second brain because now you don't have to think about, oh, what do I need to study on my flashcards today? You just open the app and you do it. It tells you what to do. Use the algorithm. It's incredible. It saves you a lot of time. I've been using Anki, I feel like for almost a decade now. So I used it through my DNP program, and then I've been out of school now for over 5 years, and I'm still using it. I literally did cards this morning. But it is not just me who thinks Anki is a great idea.
I spent 6 years in medical school at Cambridge University and 2 years working full-time as a doctor in the UK's National Health Service. And there was one app that got me through that entire experience, and that app is called Anki. And it's not just me who thinks that Anki is an absolute game changer. There are literally hundreds of thousands of students all around the world who swear by using Anki for pretty much every subject.
It is huge. If you look at Reddit or YouTube, there's a million examples of medical students using Anki all the time. And it just hasn't transferred over to nursing school yet, but I really think it needs to. I used it myself, like I said, and it really, really helps. I'm going to make a more in-depth video about this. You can probably see the link here or at the end of the video. That being said, I want to do a couple quick little things to note. If you're going to use Anki, couple things. First, minimum necessary information needs to go on each card. So don't have like 2 paragraphs of text on the card. And this is really just like, you could call it flashcard etiquette for any kind of flashcard, whether you're using Quizlet or Anki or even paper cards. If you have a whole bunch of information on there, it's inefficient and you don't even really know what you're asking yourself. So instead of saying, copying, pasting a full paragraph from the textbook and putting it on there, you should just say one thing. Lisinopril is what class of medication? Very simple. You know what's being asked. Ask it like that. And then on the back, it should just say ACE inhibitor. That's it. Make it very simple and clean. The other thing is, don't make flashcards for every single thing or you won't end up doing them. If you have to study 7,000 flashcards in the next 3 weeks, you're not going to get through them. A good general rule is try to keep it to like 10 to 15, 10 to 20 cards per 1 hour lecture. So what kind of content should go on a flashcard? If you know, I have to know this, then it's probably needing to be on a flashcard. Or if it's in your red section, you've gone through your active recall for a while and there's just things that you're really struggling to remember, then pull from that red section and make those into flashcards. You should not have flashcards on your green material. If it's green, get it out of your flashcard deck. You're wasting your time. You could have some yellows if they're important, but it should mostly be reds or hypercritical information. All right, so now our brief intro to Anki. So if you look here, I have a deck pulled up, and don't worry about a lot of this stuff. Again, another video will go into this in more detail, but I just want to show you how it works in general. So here I've got my medicine deck that I perpetually study as a nurse practitioner. Let's go ahead and hit study now. And this is what our cards can look like. I have most of mine set up as what are called closed deletion cards, which means fill in the blank. So here we see max recommended radiation per year, I know is, I believe it's 50 millisieverts. So I'm gonna hit spacebar, that flips the card, yep, and now it says it was 50 millisieverts, I got it right. This was additional information I had on the front of the card, and then also when I flip the card, you can have extra information on the back. Then if you hit spacebar again, that tells the Anki algorithm that you got it right, it was pretty good. That's the same as selecting good here. You'll notice if you get it wrong, you hit again. If it was hard, good, or easy, you'll notice these times above it. That is when you're gonna see the card next. So I got it right, so I'm gonna hit good, which means I'll see it again in 3 days. If it was really easy, I'd hit easy, and that algorithm would space that out to 5 days. If it was hard, it would make it 2 days. And if I got it wrong, I couldn't remember it, I'm gonna see it in less than 10 minutes. I'm gonna see it again. And so this constantly works. Every time you do a card, your algorithm is sorting it into a filing cabinet of when should you see this next. It's incredible. So anyway, I got this one right. So let's go again. What's the generic name for Cialis? Tadalafil. I knew that one. Now these are cards that I made literally yesterday in the clinic because I couldn't remember the generic name of Cialis. And so again, I'm gonna hit fine and it's good, it's 3 days. Which cardiac condition excludes young athletes from competitive sports? What's cool here is on these fill in the blanks, you can also put text in there to help you remember what are you actually asking yourself. So here, which cardiac condition excludes young athletes from competitive sports? That is hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And I have a picture here on the back. Again, really cool stuff I'll get into in the other video, but I want you to notice for now down here, because I've had this card in my deck for a very long time, I'm gonna hit good. I'm not gonna see this card for another 1.5 years. Now I'm years and years into Anki, but the cool thing is the more you get an answer right, the less you are going to see that card. And this is how it makes it an efficient use of your time, because things that I know well, I'm only gonna see once every 1.5 years. I don't need to see this all the time. I know it. Now, if I said, that was a little harder than I'd like, I'd still see it in 8 months. Or if I got it wrong, I'd see it in less than 10 minutes, right? So I'm gonna hit good because I did get it right. Post-stroke, blank months on anticoagulation before elective surgery is allowed. So you should be 6 to 12 months on anticoagulation, good. And here's another example. I made this card, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. And so by getting it right, it moves it out to, I'm not gonna see this for another 17 days. You can already see how that learning or the forgetting curve is being used, right? It's spacing things out. Here's another example, which is cool. So if you remember, the first question I asked was how many millisieverts are recommended as max radiation per year for the average person. But I had all of this text on one card, but I was able to make multiple cards, even though I only wrote the information once. Because I also set up the card to say, coronary CTA can range anywhere from 2 to how many millisieverts per scan, and I think it's 2 to 25. It is. But this is a great example of how you can write a couple of things on one card and make multiple cards out of it, and it's just another way of saving time. And then I wanted to remember the code for native beauty, which is G0439. Yes! Oh, good. All right, great. That right there, that was authentic, and that is what you need to be experiencing is that, oh gosh, what was that? You guys just watched my neurons make a connection. All right, great. Moving on. The other thing, which I think is even more effective, is called the Pomodoro technique, which it helps you to focus because it sets time constraints on how long you can study. So typically what this means, and this is evidence-based, there's research, look into it. You set a timer for 25 minutes, and then at the end of 25 minutes, you mandate that you have a 5-minute break, at which point you stand up, get off your phone and your laptop, and do something relaxing for 5 minutes. And then after that 5-minute timer, you go back and set another 25-minute timer, and you focus for 25 minutes. During those 25 minutes, your phone is off. If you can turn the Wi-Fi off, that's even better, so you're not even distracted on your laptop, and you are focusing for 25 minutes. It helps because you know, like if you start to get bored, you're like, I only have like 17 minutes left, I can do this. It's different than being like, I need to study all day, this sucks, right? And so use the Pomodoro technique, but again, the main thing is your effective studying equals active recall time spaced repetition. All right, so we talked about a handful of things, before class, during class, after class, the normal study routine. What about just before an exam? I'm not against cramming. I'm against cramming as the only thing you're doing. So as long as you've done all these things prior, then yeah, cram before the exam. Why would you not? There's 2 ways you can do this, and I've done both of them. You can go into Notion and just go over all of the questions in the Notion file, doing the reds first and then the yellows and then the greens. If you have time for the greens, you just go over those, and you should have Notion on your phone, so you're just going through it on your phone as you're walking to class, even walking to the exam. The other thing is you can go into Anki and do what's called a custom study session, which will then, you can choose the cards you want to do, and it'll pull all of them up now. So you can just bang through all your flashcards right before. And again, in my other video about Anki, I'll show you how to do that. But that's what you would do. And again, you're doing active recall still just before the exam. All right, so that is really the most evidence-based, truly effective way to study in nursing school. If this has been helpful, please subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be posting a video on how to use Anki. I'm going to do a tutorial, walk you guys through it, so look out for that one. Just to make it stress-free and to get better grades with less anxiety. I mean, who doesn't want that? And again, just remember, memorize this in your brain, let it burn into your retina. Effective studying equals active recall times spaced repetition. All right, guys, hope this was helpful. I'll see ya.